see the damage. Holy shit! Okay, dude. Okay. That's exactly what I wanted to see.
This is power.
What's up, boys? Valentine here. Today we're gonna have a little chat about the build that actually got me to level 100. A very efficient and very intriguing build. This time around, however, we're not gonna start with the actual abilities. We're gonna be starting with the items, because it's very important that you first understand how the build works. This is one of the Exodia builds, meaning that it's sort of a build that you work towards, so that you reach the end game and you have this absolutely busted, broken build that's nearly unkillable. That's the point of this build, but until you get to the end game and you have most of the items, it's not really gonna work. So that's one of the problems with the build. So what we have in front of us here is my items. Right off the bat, we gotta talk about Tempest Roar. So Tempest Roar is the item that you absolutely must need, more so than any of the items here. Without Tempest Roar, and this legendary right here, which turns you into a dire werewolf when you use Grizzly Rage, the entire build does not work. These are the mandatory items. Now, what does Tempest Roar do? It has a small side effect. A lucky hit, storm skills have up to a 23% chance to grant Fort Spirit. That's all fine. It's not too good, it's not too bad, but this one's the most important part. Your base storm skills are now also werewolf skills. The reason why that's important is because we're using the werewolf synergies in order to make the whole build work. And we're trying to turn into a dire werewolf in order to not have any spirit consumption, so we can spam tornadoes. That's how the build works, that's what it's trying to do, and that's why it's mandatory that we turn your storm skills into werewolf skills so you can use them during your ultimate. That's the goal here. Now, in order to actually do damage with this, sure you can have these two, but you won't be doing any damage. In order to do damage, you need the rest of the legendaries, which is why it's an Exodia build. So we got this here, which is actually what causes you to do damage. The duration of Grizzly Rage is increased by 8 seconds. In addition, critical strikes while Grizzly Rage is active increase your critical strike damage by 10% for the duration. What this does is it stacks critical strike damage, and it's basically not even capped. The cap for this is, I believe, 99. So you can go up to almost 1000% critical strike damage. That's how insane this build is. That's what you actually want to stack up with the build. So you're going to be using this legendary 100% guaranteed, but how you're going to do critical strikes while you're in Grizzly Rage. And that's where this legendary comes from. Earthen Might key passive also applies to your storm skills. Yet another synergy that on a surface level by itself doesn't really do much, right? But when put into this build, it's a critical core piece, because what does Earthen Might do? Let's take a look here. Skill 3, we go down, and we see damaging enemies with Earth skills has up to a 5% chance to restore earlier spirit. Not as relevant, but cause your attacks to be guaranteed critical strikes for 5 seconds. With the amount of tornadoes you're dishing out, you will pretty much have this guaranteed during your ultimate. It will pop up and you will start racking up that critical strike damage, and that's exactly what you want to do. That's how Earthen Might works. So you're gonna be using that, you'll be critting a lot, as you've seen in the video. You'll just be permanently critting because you have so many tornadoes up proccing your lucky hits. You'll just continuously rack up damage until you get into millions of DPS. Now, what else do we need? We obviously need Tornado will seek up to 3 targets. This is what makes Tornado not be a piece of shit, because normally Tornado has no tracking, so it will just go to whichever direction it wishes to go. But with this ultimate, we can make sure that it actually stays on the target. And We also use this one. Critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 25% for 5 seconds. It's decent, okay? It's not too bad. It's good. I like the attack speed because attack speed means more tornadoes. So this build actually scales really hard. With attack speed, you want as much attack speed as possible because your damage comes from this, stacking the crit damage. You won't get as much value out of increasing the actual damage of the tornadoes. You will get a whole lot more value from simply dishing out more tornadoes, getting more crits per second, and racking up the critical strike damage as much as possible. So that's what you're after here. Let's go into the actual abilities themselves and explain the build from the ability perspective. So we got Storm Strike. You don't actually want the vulnerability this time around. You're mostly just using it as a way to gain spirit in a very, very rare pinch. Most of the time you'll be a werewolf anyway, so you don't actually need this. We got Tornado. Obviously, you want as many points in this as possible. As you can see, I buffed it up to 3 points. You want to get as many items with Tornado stats on it as possible, as many items with Storm skill buffs as possible. That's what you're after. We got the chance to spawn additional tornadoes. That's always good. And enemies hit by tornado have a 10% chance to become vulnerable for 3 seconds. You might have heard previously that I said this is worthless. And it's still kind of really horrible because it very rarely props up. But with the way the build works, with how many tornadoes you're spamming out, this 10% chance does actually become somewhat viable. It's not the best thing in the world, but it works. Obviously, Heart of the Wild and then Wild Impulses, because the 9% more spirit doesn't really factor in. The reason for that is because you get 100% spirit cost reduction on a perfect roll on the ultimate. So you will never actually consume any spirit. Even if you did consume spirit, let's say you're going for the one-handed build, which is also an option. One of the great things about that is that you don't actually have to go for it in the same way you would go with other builds trying to generate spirit, because you're still reducing the cost and you can just opt into the werewolf synergies that give you spirit, right? For example, you got that Paragon board. Let me show you guys. This one, critical strikes with werewolf skills restored to spirit. You always crit, so this is insane. You will always be generating enough spirit in order to sustain your tornadoes. Now back to the abilities. We got the additional crit chance. You always want to roll crit chance on your items. The reason for that is because Earthen Might won't be up 100% of the time, and it gets a whole 10% chance increase to proc. So baseline Earthen Might has a 5% chance on a lucky hit to proc, but if you crit on that lucky hit, it goes up to 15%. And if you're also hitting an immobilized enemy, then it goes up to 25%, so it's even higher. It's actually why you sometimes want to use Storm Strike, so you can hit an immobilized enemy, so you can have a higher chance to proc Earthen Might, which is quite interesting. Especially in big waves of enemies, it greatly increases your chances to proc your Earthen Might. Next up, we have Cyclone Armor and Blood Howl. I think we all know how this works, but a Cyclone Armor is a very interesting choice this time around, because it's actually one of the main reasons why you're running it is for this. Cyclone Armor becomes, enemies hit by Cyclone Armor become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This is really great, because you can use it as a burst cooldown, right? So you walk up to an enemy, you proc vulnerable on them with Cyclone Armor, and you push them into your tornadoes, because you can just dish tornadoes out as you're walking towards him, and you'll see the tornadoes will go through the enemy, and you can proc your Cyclone Armor to push them back into the enemy. It actually works really well that way. Then you got your Blood Howl, very low cooldown, especially in group play, because all of the enemies that are killed on the map count towards your Blood Howl, as it turns out. So if you're doing group play, if you're trying to level really quickly with a group, you will always have Blood Howl up. So you can always have the 15% steroid up for attack speed. And of course you really want this, because more attack speed means more tornadoes, means more damage for you. Another very important thing to grab is Ancestral Fortitude, just so you don't have to invest any more important stats on your weapons towards non-physical resistances. You just get the 15% here, and anything that you will have to grab through your Paragon for resistances, make sure you're very, very close to the cap for resistances. You never want to surpass the cap. That's a very bad idea, a huge waste of your time, but you always want to reach the cap. That's the important part, so this helps you do that. And Vigilance. You gain 15% damage for 6 seconds after using a defensive skill. This is really, really good for you because you always have a defensive skill up. With Blood Howl, it's really good. Blood Howl helps you quite a lot. Since it has no cooldown, you will always have your defensive buff up. That means a 15% damage reduction with 100% time upkeep. And if you really need it, if for some reason your Blood Howl isn't up, you can also use Cyclone Armor as a way to buff yourself up. You don't want anything from your companion skills, of course. And then we reach this point. Hurricane is a very important defensive cooldown. It is actually one of your more broken defensive cooldowns because what it does is does damage over time, and if it crits, that means you'll be benefiting from your spirit boon right here. Masochistic critical strikes with shape-shifting skills heal you for 3% maximum life. So the way this works is if you're around, let's say, 10 enemies and your hurricane is currently critting, you will be healing for 30% of your life per second. Every single tick will heal you for 30% of your life. It's insane. You're also getting 20% damage reduction with this, and you're slowing them. So you're benefiting from any crowd controlled and slowed modifiers from your weapon. So another great addition. Now, elemental exposure. Your storm skills have up to a 10% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. This is just another, little thing that you prop up just to make sure that you get more vulnerable on your enemies. It's not mandatory, but it's there. It's a decent option. Why not grab it? And increase the duration of Hurricane and Cataclysm by 15%. Not so much of an investment, not something that you necessarily need. Hurricane has a decent uptime. You don't really want it 100% of the time. This just helps you a little bit. I went for as much defensive as I could get because I'll be honest, I play hardcore, so this is my level 100 hardcore character we're talking about. I wanted to be having its defensives up as much as possible. But if you want to reroute some points, don't be afraid to take them from Endless Tempest or Elemental Exposure and put them into something you see as more fun during your softcore playthrough. Don't think too much about all these defensives. Those are for me because I'm a hard ass. Now we got Neurotoxin. You want this because it makes it so all of the poisoned enemies are slowed. Another way for you to benefit from the slowed modifier. And you get Toxic Claws, which means critical strikes with werewolf skills deal 23% of their base damage as poisoning damage over 4 seconds. You always poison enemies with every single one of your skills. That means your tornadoes, your hurricane, your cyclone armor, your storm strike, everything poisons enemies. So you always get the benefit from this. It's not a lot of damage, don't get me wrong, but it does stack up over time, which is very, very interesting. Right, it's basically another 23% base damage. I would say for every tornado hit, you get another 3k damage. Baseline, they do about 10,000 at my level, I believe. Yep. So basically, it's only gonna be 30% off the base damage that's written on the tooltip. So don't think it's gonna be some insane amount of damage. Normally, I would just keep it at 1 point, but I've been experimenting with poison for a little while here because of a little broken synergy we'll be looking at in another build. But Toxic Claws, decent perk. You generally just want 1 point into it. This is the one you're really after. You can see I actually kept it on my amulet with +3. What it does is it makes it so you do more critical strike damage to poisoned enemies. And that's, for me, 60% because I have 3 item contribution. But baseline, it's 30%. Still a very insane trait. Still something that you really want to have even if you don't have any additional points into it. 30% crit damage is absolutely broken. Next up we got Defiance, 12% increased damage to elites. You can put your points in pretty much everything else here, it doesn't really matter. This one and this one don't really work because your storm skills deal 4% increased damage to enemies that are stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. You do have some knockbacks, but they're not consistent enough to warrant putting points into this. And this nature magic skills deal up to 3%, not 3%, 6% increased damage. Triple this bonus if an earth skill is the next skill cast after a storm skill. So you don't really use earth skills in this build, meaning it's 3 points from your skill tree dedicated to only 3% increased, not 3%, 6% increased damage. It's not exactly worth it. You don't really want this. And then Circle of Life, that's the one that will heal you a lot because you'll have your tornadoes running around. You'll always get the healing from nature magic skills, Circle of Life. Of course, we have your ultimate. This one makes you unstoppable for the entire duration. It's your most important cooldown. You want to run anything that increases the duration of this, and you want to run everything that increases your power during this ultimate. So you got all the legendaries that increase the ultimate's duration. You got everything from your spirit boons as well, extended duration of ultimate skills, and more importantly, Calm Before the Storm. The nature magic skills have up to a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate by 2 seconds. Really, really good. You always want that. And then, just to wrap up the spirit boons here, we got wariness and crit chance. You don't want crit damage because you're already racking up too much crit damage. So crit chance for the more consistency, and masochistic for your survival. And of course, lastly, we got Earthen Might. This is what makes it so you're always critting. Pretty self-explanatory, you'll be fishing for this a lot. And now for a very defensive option, which we haven't talked about, defensive posture. Don't really care about this one, what you want is Nature's Resolve. 15% chance when struck to fortify for 4% base life. And you might say, well, that's pretty shit. And you would be correct. The reason why I take it is because your main fortify generator is your Grizzly Rage, and sometimes you get like a 10-second period where your Grizzly Rage won't actually be up. So that's one of the big negatives about running the build with a two-handed weapon, because normally you can run cooldown reduction on your totem, and the totems also give you base cooldown reduction, so it's actually 2 cooldown reduction multipliers, which makes it so you have your Grizzly Rage up more consistently. Well, with my version of the build, the one that's more bursty, you don't have any spirit costs, but you do lack some of the cooldowns, so you're more reliant on lucky hit procs for Calm Before the Storm. So the way that works is you're actually gonna be keeping up the fortify you generate with Grizzly Rage. Using this, you just get it once every couple of seconds. You don't need to rely on it as your main fortify generator, you just need it to proc every once in a while so that your fortify will be kept up. And that's the build. Right now I'm gonna go ahead and get inside the dungeon and show you guys how the build actually works. So here we are in Burrows. I want to take this opportunity to also explain to you guys how Burrows works. As you can see, I already went down the top lane. Basically what you want to do is to run builds so fast that you can get to your infested villager within a minute. If you can do that within a minute and clear all of the infested villagers and the mobs along the way, then that means you can essentially double the experience you're getting from this dungeon. Normally people clear it in a group in 2 minutes. 2 minutes for 600k experience. You can do the math there, or I'll put it on screen for you guys of how much experience you're getting per hour. And this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to run this build, because it's so fast, it allowed me to clear that much faster. So getting together a group that can clear that fast and grind that fast is what you wanted to do if you are behind in experience or catching up. And I'm gonna show you guys just how fast this build is. So you ult immediately. You don't care about little mobs, your tornadoes will take care of them. Right, they're just getting killed, absolute slaughter. Boom, you slow, you put vulnerable on him with your cyclone, one shot. There it is. And that's your run. And imagine you got 3 other teammates who are doing the exact same thing as you. That's the goal you want with burrows. If you have 3 other teammates, as you can see, I've run a little timer for you guys, so you can see how efficient the build is. If you have 3 other teammates doing this at roughly level 60 or something, you can essentially get to level 100 twice as fast as everyone else. That's the importance of this build. That's why I wanted to switch over to it the first chance I could get. So that's why I also recommend you guys run this build, for its efficiency and survivability. Because another reason why I'm running this build, and I'm going to be showing you guys this as well. Let's say I want to take some damage. Fortunately, my build's too strong, guys, so it's really hard for me to take damage. As you can see, it's really difficult. This is level 100 content, and yeah, that's just how it is. So you got a bunch of mobs attacking you. Let's say you're lagging out, but you have your hurricane up. I have hurricane up. You can't do shit to me. Why? Because of how hurricane works, right? So the way hurricane works is you got a spirit boon which heals you for 3% of your life. All you need to do is just have hurricane up, and it will heal you for more than any mob can damage you. It doesn't matter how many mobs are attacking you, because the more mobs are attacking you, the more you're gonna heal. So you can never actually die in any conceivable way. My character has already beaten the game already. The only way I could die is if I go to much higher dungeons, and I end up dying there. The butcher's a joke as well. Maybe you will see him here, because there's a goblin. There's usually a good chance you'll meet the butcher if you see a goblin. Let's see if we can find the guy. Hello, butcher. Where you at? I guess we're not getting a visit today. Oh, shame. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show you guys. This is an insanely fast clear. Obviously, I'm not clearing right now. I don't have a team put together so we can clear that insanely fast. But that's what you want. You want to clear the whole infested villagers within a minute, reset, do it all again. That's your highest number of experience that you can get. Obviously, this is the damage without the ultimate. I don't want to pop my ultimate for just some trash when I'm not in a race. It's best you keep the cooldown just going when you actually hit a big pack that requires you to use your ultimate. That's the way I like to play. But generally, you want to have your ultimate 100% of the time as you're going through the dungeon. You can have it 100% of the time as well, because the faster you're going through the dungeon, the more tornadoes you're dishing out, the more procs you're getting on the 2-second cooldown reduction on your ultimate. So that's how it would all play out. You go fast, you kill fast, you get more procs, which means you get your ultimate faster, which means you can do it all again, over and over again. So that's the point of the build. I'm go ahead and TP to town because I learned my lesson. Already died once because I wasn't in town when I disconnected, so better make sure you guys do that if you're gonna play hardcore. Just another friendly tip to leave you off. And that was it from me today. Hope you guys are gonna really enjoy this build. I personally liked it, and hope you guys will have a grand old time. Bye bye.